Tina Fruit, and I'm the founder of Courtney's House. We work with boys and girls ages 12 to 21 that are sex trafficked in the U.S. and outside.
Define sex trafficking or sex slavery.
To define sex trafficking and sex slavery, I think everyone's really confused by that term. So sex trafficking means what we all grew up with knowing is pimping. People who force people, though, into forced prostitution. And then that other word, sex slave, I think is tricky because we think overseas, and let's just be honest, in the African American community, we really don't like to connect many things to slavery. But let me explain to you why this really is slavery, and trafficking, slavery, and pimping is all into one. 200 years ago, when there were slaves, there was an overseer, and the overseer was black. Not only was the overseer black, he watched the other slaves, and he tricked the other slaves, and he actually worked for the slave master. The overseer actually had a gun. He sat on a horse, but he didn't try to free the other slaves at all. He kept him and his family members in slavery and snitched on them when they sang the Song of Freedoms. They were like, hey, let me tell you, slave master, they about to run right now. They rolling out. I'm telling you what those songs are, and that's what they doing. So with that being said, there was already a divide. Well, what people don't understand and know is that when the slaves ran and they couldn't find them all, the overseer got 40 lashes for every slave that ran. Well, that dynamic and control for pimping is a girl. So that girl is called the bottom, and the bottom has to watch the other girls. There was no application to be the slave, the overseer of the slaves. There's no application to be picked to be the bottom who watches over the other people. The slave records were actually kept in a stable, and pimps refer to a stable of girls that they have. So I think it's really interesting that people don't think this is slavery, but pimps call their girls their slaves, and they use all the same rules of slavery, the divide and conquer. So when there were slaves that were field slaves out in the field, and then there were slaves that were inside the house, that divide and conquer and that mentality, why on earth would an overseer, a slave who had a gun, not free himself and other people? Because he had a false sense of security that one day he would be free. So when people ask me if it's slavery, it is, because it's based, all the rules are based off of slavery.
I think it's safe to say that when the American people think of sex slavery and sex trafficking, they think of it only happening in places like Cambodia or Africa or something, but that's not really the case, is it?
And I think it's really how it's worded, you know, in the media and in the newspapers we see. Because what we see is 12-year-old Cambodia children trafficked from Cambodia to the U.S. Or we'll hear, you know, Russians trafficked. But when it's U.S. citizens, right here in Washington, D.C., where we're here and do street outreach 4 blocks away from the White House, what you hear is child prostitutes, 12-year-old sex ring with child prostitutes. So instead of saying that it's trafficking because it's U.S. citizens, it's prostitution, even when they're minors. And that happens right here in D.C.
Washington, D.C., the seat of the nation's power, supposedly. Okay. These men that abuse these children, what walks of life do they come from? Given that you're so close to the nation's seat of the nation's power, what walks of life do these men come from?
We do street outreach in Washington, D.C., right here, 4 blocks away from the White House. So the income that I'm talking about is going to be a different demographic and income, I think, that people think. They can be men with money, men without money, but usually if you're paying a fee from a pimp and have to pay $125 an hour to $200 per hour, then we're talking about an affluent community that can afford that and can afford to pay for a child.
It's a web of intrigue and spreads out like a spider web to Washington, D.C., right up to the steps of the nation's capital, the steps of the White House. Involves some of the most respected and powerful and richest businessmen in this United States of America. And the centerpiece of the entire web is the use of children for sex and drug dealing and drug couriers, the compromising of politicians, the compromising of businessmen, but worst of all, the corruption of key institutions of government that have the duty and responsibility to make sure these things never happen.
Tell me how it begins for said children. How do these children even get trapped into a life like this? Is there a set way that they get sucked into that, or are there different ways?
So in the U.S., there are 4 paradigms of sex trafficking. So that's pimp control, gang control, family control, and boy/transgender. So pimp control can be where a lot of different ways, where another girl, because all pimps are not male, they can also be female. So it can also be another girl bringing you to meet their boyfriend, and you don't know that this guy is a pimp. Or he can try to date that particular person, and again, not knowingly knowing that he's a pimp, and he tricks you into that piece. That's an average way that people usually enter life. Family control is very important, because I think if they did the right statistics, we will see in the U.S. that it's actually more family control. So that means a person's family, their mother, their father, their uncle inside their family is selling them for sex. Gang control. So maybe again a girl doesn't know or knowingly joins a gang. And it was not those years where they move up in the gang and they become captain, they become lieutenant, and they actually have a role in the gang, but they're usually sold for sex inside the gangs. So that can be that way. They go to a skip party. So a skip party is a party during the day that they'll go to, and usually you get gang banged in. So you get gang raped in, and they videotape it, and they force you to enter working for them, and that they're going to show everybody this video. And then you have boys. I think boys are overlooked in trafficking. We joke, we make fun, we say, oh, it's probably them doing it on their own, but we should probably remember that any child under the age of 18 is protected, because they can't sell themselves. So even if we think they're just selling themselves to have a place to live, a grown man bought sex from a child, and that's a crime. So boys are also tricked in as well. Boys can also have a pimp, or they can work with a family and have a transgender male called mama or grandma, godmama, that also runs that family and puts them on the street to sell. So there are different ways that actually people enter. The saddest part is that they all go through the same turmoil.
So what is an average day and an average night for a child like that?
Each paradigm of sex trafficking is very different. However, all the outcome is the same. So you spend your day working. It doesn't just mean on the street. You know, it can be on the street, it can be online, it can be in strip clubs, and yes, shocker, all strip clubs aren't legit. So strip clubs as well to work, and you can be forced to do in-call, out-call at hotels. So you work all day. So usually you work between, 18 to 22 hours a day. It's about making money for somebody else.
And you just repeatedly have sex.
It's about making a quota. So each person has a quota that they have to bring home. Monday through Thursday, it's usually about $2,000 Monday through Thursday, $4,000 on a weekend per child that you have. You can make that in a few hours, so usually the price goes up. And you work all day, forced to have sex all day long.
One after another.
If you can control about 3 or 4 key elements, you can totally own a state. You can make right wrong. You can make truth falsehood, falsehood truth. If you control the media, if you control the Justice Department, if you control the police, you own the system.
Now, when you hear of sex trafficking, you probably think of countries in Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, but trafficking kids for prostitution is actually the 3rd highest moneymaker for organized crime right here in the United States. Only gun and drug sales supersede it. It's something that occurs daily, and no city is immune, not even Washington, D.C.
When I was in slavery, because that's what I was in, he told us, our trafficker said that he was our slave master. He told us that he controlled us. So if the slave master, the traffickers, are using that term, then why aren't we? Because that's what they're saying. It is slavery.
So tell me how it began for you, Tina. Why did you decide to fight this particular fight?
Well, as being a survivor of child sex trafficking, it really started when I was 9 years old inside the foster care system in Chicago, Illinois. And so it started at 9. However, it didn't end until my late 20s. So with that being said, at 9 years old, you don't really know that someone's selling you for sex. You know that someone's making you do things that you don't want to do. Like me and all of our survivors, 90% of them were all sexually abused before their sex trafficking situation. So way before 9 years old. Really means that I didn't have consensual sex ever. And I think that's really important before we judge people, is that if you never had consensual sex, then you're used to people taking it away from you. And you grow up thinking that everybody does what you're doing because that's all you know. And with that being said, when you say something out loud because you assume everyone's doing it, then you realize that there's a secret that you're supposed to keep. I was adopted at 12 years old, and my family was fine. No issues with them who adopted me at all. But it's also very difficult as a child being in over 23 different homes and moving constantly and being abused and having a stability. So my dad's white, and I think I was really scared at first when I was adopted because I thought all white men had sex with kids. And I think that's an important statement that I said because that was most of my buyers that were Caucasian males. So of course my father never touched me, didn't do anything. And then I thought that he was the only one on earth. So when I was about 13 and a half, I met this guy, and really he was just in my neighborhood. There's like no secret story to that. He was just in my neighborhood. I saw him sometimes, he spoke to me. I didn't know what a pimp was. I thought a pimp had a big hat and a cane too. Just like any show on TV that people would think, I didn't know. What's interesting about that is that I was in a sex trafficking situation at 9. So of course I wouldn't think this guy's a pimp because I was different from my situation. That was a family control situation. So actually most survivors of sex trafficking do get into other sex trafficking situations because one presents itself very different than the other. And people in the outside world don't understand that. You think it's all the same. It's not. It's very different. So this guy really just was nice to me. He didn't do anything wrong, I thought. So he came to me very polite and nice. One day, he just started paying more attention to me. It was there, and you open up and you start talking. But this took several months. This didn't just happen overnight. It took several months of a relationship. He was 15 years older than me, and I was 13 and a half. So with that being said, he told me I was mature for my age. I was smart for my age. He did not try to have sex with me right away. And I think that's important because that goes under your radar. They're not trying to sleep with you. They're just talking to you. They're showing you attention. But he also said he grew up in foster care. And he also said that he was adopted. So then the next step within that is one day I'm running late from school. So he offered to give me a ride home. And so did I get to school? Of course I got to school because it had to establish trust. Then he started buying me things that he asked me not to really show my parents to keep so I wouldn't get in trouble, that he'll keep it. And anytime I needed it, then he'll come and give it to me. Mm-hmm. So he's establishing this control that I'm not even seeing. So one day, really, I had an argument on my 14th birthday. So I was 13 and a half. And my argument with my parents was that I couldn't stay out past 10 o'clock. A pretty simple, easy thing. And I didn't understand staying out past 10 because basically I grew up living in abandoned buildings, running away from foster care with my other foster brothers and sisters, living in abandoned buildings because we were getting abused. I've been cooking since I was 8. So to me, that was a humongous thing because I've been taking care of myself for so long. So he told me call him when anything ever went wrong. So I called him and he said, I'll pick you up in 15 minutes and not to take anything. So I think that's important that he said that. He said, don't take anything. So as a child, I'm not thinking I'm running away. I'm not thinking I'm running away. There is no doubt in my mind I was coming back. In my head, I was going to come back, and then my parents would see that I can take care of myself because I'm 14. So with that being said, I get in the car with him, and he started to tell me that his family he always told me his family had a family business, but it was in Cleveland, Ohio. So he told me that he was on his way to Cleveland, Ohio, but he stopped everything he was doing to come get me. However, he still needed to go to Cleveland, so I had to go with him, but he'll take me back home the next day, and he'll let me call my parents. And he always told me he had a 6-bedroom house, and he had this big mansion in Cleveland, Ohio, and guess what? He really had a big mansion because he's a pimp. The only difference was there were 4 other girls there that were younger. Everybody was about under the age of 16, and there were 2 other guys. So he told me I could use the phone, and it was okay to go in the room and use it, but I didn't even notice that there was a lock or anything on the outside of the door, but there was no phone in the room. So the next process is called seasoning, and seasoning is rape. So the two other guys came in and they rape you. The saddest part of that, I think, is that, you know, 2 is no more. Most of our survivors are raped by either 5 to 15 different guys, and 2 doesn't even happen anymore. So the pimp never came. Like, he never was there during the rape, but he comes right after. So he came right after, he put me on his lap, and he basically told me how much he can protect me and how much he cared about me, but I had to listen to him, and he'll never steal me astray. And I think people really need to understand and get that, because not only are they setting up a rape, they're also bringing back everything you ever went through in that very moment of always being raped and abused.
I was sexually abused. I was raped when I was 5 and then again at age 8. And I was so bitter and angry. I hated the world. But one day I was talking to my aunt. She told me, Debbie, your father was raped when she was about 13. Her stepfather was her abuser. She wanted, you know, that love that she never got as a child, but she didn't know how to do it. So she was caught up in drugs and that lifestyle too. I left my baby, she was 7. I'm serving 12 to 36 years. Those years I should have been there with my daughter. It's like I feel like history repeats itself, because my mother came to prison, she was a junkie, and now here I am. Where does the cycle stop?
So really, I think the whole piece is dehumanizing. It's not just one concept of taking away your body, it's also taking away your mind, who you can ever be and who you ever were. So everything is your fault when you're in a life. Not bringing home enough money, getting called by the police, being tired, being sick. And you're never allowed to eat before you're forced to work. And the reason why you're never allowed to eat is because food motivates you to make someone else's money. And no, you don't get to keep any of it. They buy things for you. So they get your hair done and they get makeup for you. But you don't actually hold any of the money. So all the other girls are your wife-in-laws or your sister-in-law's term. And you're all part of the money. The family, however, it's kind of a dysfunctional family, because he tells everybody something different. But there are also watchers and other people that are alongside of him that helps. So he came from a family of pimps, and his grandmother was also actually one of the main controllers. So we were beaten. She's the one who sewed us up, put bandages on, told us that God put us on earth to be a hoe and to make money for us together, and that we were smarter than anybody else because people gave it away for free. So having a 72-year-old tell you this and tell all the other women that, and other young girls, you tend to believe it because this is this older woman who's this monarch of the family who is telling everybody this is what God puts you on earth to be and do. So when I was 15 years old, now over a year later, going to different many cities and states, I got beat up the day before and I had a broken arm. So she had bandaged my arm, and I was actually back in Chicago, Illinois. And I say back because we moved around a lot. And by being back in Chicago, I was tired. I was just tired. So when the police did a raid, I actually told how old I really was, that I was 15 years old. And at that particular time, the police officer actually didn't know me because he knew my pimp, and he said that, oh, you're just mad because if we put you in juvie, he's not going to be able to get you out. You'll feel bad and you'll go back to him. And so I was arrested and charged for prostitution. My family was alerted. They did put a missing persons out on me. When you put a missing persons out on a child, it goes into the system as a runaway. We have to watch how we label things, because as a runaway, I also got a charge for that. So I got a charge for abscondence, I had a charge for prostitution. So actually, I thought the pimp was right. He said that if I ever say anything, I was the one who would get in trouble, and that's exactly what happened.
And how long were you in juvenile detention?
I was in juvenile detention for a year, and I got into a huge fight. And so when we were going up to court, the judge was pretty much tired of seeing me getting in trouble still inside of juvenile detention. I was supposed to be committed into the juvenile detention until I was 21 years old. and he puts you like upstate juvenile. But for some odd reason, I went to court and I had a different judge. And when I had the different judge, which is crazy, but I had a woman judge, because I'll never forget, and I had a male judge the whole time. And for some reason, I had a different judge. And she decided it was ridiculous to commit me because I hadn't gotten in any trouble before all of the situations that happened. And instead, she released me to my parents' care. And so we were actually able to move, and we moved to Alexandria, Virginia. But that doesn't really stop a situation at all. It just moves your location.
It didn't stop what situation?
Well, you get into other situations, you know. So when it doesn't stop a situation, that's what people don't get about it. Now, I've learned something throughout this. Since before I was really 9, but then starting at 9, I've learned something. That really people just want to use your body to get what they want. And what if you cut the middle person out? What if you learned the skill that you think you can sell yourself and get this money and you can keep the money? What if at that time you start to hate men so much that you just want to hurt them and take all their money because you hate them, and so you just want to take all their money, and that's the only thing that you know to hurt someone is to hit them in their pockets?
So is that what happened to you?
That happens to me and all our survivors. Your real addiction is money addiction. That's your real addiction, because you learned a skill, you know. And whether you view it as negative, and it is, you don't love it, and it's not about the sex at all, because you're not even there, you're not even present when it's happening. You think about the money and about taking all their money and lying to them like they lied to you. And that crap that, you know, buyers say, like, I pay their bills, I do, that's all the crap you tell them because you don't care about them, because they don't care about you. You grow this hatred inside of you that you don't really understand. You know you have a hatred for them. My hatred really was towards pimps a lot. I hated them. And I did not get with another pimp like willingly. You know, again, it wasn't willingly. You try to hide, but you still want the money though, because you're like, I might as well make money off of it. So with that being said, I met these girls. One of the girls had, her mom and dad were attorneys, and the other one came from a working family. And they were both Caucasian. And I remember hanging out with them the first time, and they're like, do you want to see what we do for fun after school? And I remember just looking at them like, what are they talking about? Wait a minute, what they do for fun? I'm like, well, what do y'all do? And they're like, oh, we make this money, but you don't always have to sleep with these guys. As soon as they said that, I thought they had a pimp. So I started screaming, I'm like cursing them out in the middle of the street. And they're like, what's pimp? What are you talking about, like on TV? Now I realized they didn't know what I was talking about, but the action was still the same. So they showed me how they go really on a beautiful area in Alexandria, Virginia, which is like Beauregard Street. It's a really nice area, not too far from the Pentagon. And how they, from 3 p.m. to about 8 p.m., because you have to be in the house, how to make money. And have older men buy sex from you, and you go to different bus stops and they show me. So basically that's called renegading, when you're trying to do it on your own. Well, I think people think that kids just wake up one day and go, oh, I'll just sell myself today on this street corner. Well, I'm coming from that life at that time, so I knew that wasn't true. So I asked a question that more people should ask. I said, well, who taught y'all how to do that? And so one of the girls who, both of her parents are attorneys, her uncle did, because her uncle started sexually abusing her when she was 10 years old, and he would take her out on those same streets and sell her. So when he moved away, she started doing that, and then with that, she started renegading. And she was also 16. The other girl was 16 too. And so her father, he started sexually abusing her when she was about 9 years old, and then selling her to his buddies from work when she was about 11. And so then she met Vicky, who showed her how to go outside. And so I think that's important that people understand the dynamic on how it really works, because no kid wakes up and go, I'm going to charge this much and do this. Someone brought you into it, and it becomes, that's all you know in your life, because they were all the same ages I was. You know, but you can't renegade. And people think that. And you can't. People watch you all the time, especially pimps. If pimps see you, that means that you don't have a pimp. You don't have anybody, and they'll try to get you. So that was a lot throughout my life of being kidnapped for a second, or a pimp taking you, because they kidnap you once they know you're in the life. They literally do. And then getting away from a situation. You don't stop, you change it, because that money addiction and all you know is, it kind of takes over. So, you know, even though I'm in school, you still work and you still try to make money and you still hide it. And all these things are going on after the fact of you running away from pimp, you trying to do this on your own. It's like a life of that, of all you know. And so that basically happened throughout my life until I was in my mid-20s. So I was in my mid-20s or so, and I must have moved in 12 years. I moved every 2 to 3 months to get away from men who buy sex, to get away from pimps, to switch things up. It's really this money addiction. It's not the sex. Then you try to date someone, square up, where you date somebody who's not involved, and you try to have like a normal relationship. But you can't have normal relationships because you don't believe any of the things that the men are saying to you. You don't believe that they really love you. They could probably really love you and care about you, but you don't believe it. And so my issue was definitely mental health breakdowns and not understanding that, and not wanting to get out of my bed for weeks at a time, and being depressed and not understanding.
I was the only child. I wasn't allowed to go out much. My mother hit me a lot. My stepfather used to do whatever he wanted.
This man says, "Come here, little girl, let me show you something." He takes me to this room. And in this room, there were bottle caps, there was shoelaces, matches, candles, but I didn't know what the hell was going on.
I started getting high at 13, maybe before that, 12, 13, on anything I could find, acid, Tuinol, Zelavil, Quaaludes, anything, just to get away from myself, from who I was.
And he put one of those shoelaces on my arm, and he stuck a needle right in my vein on my 14th birthday. And the saddest part about it is that I loved it.
I think we've all heard on the news of many politicians, many congresspeople who have bought sex from boys or girls. I'm sure we've all heard of that. And we also heard of...
And they just have to walk a few blocks to do it, huh? They just have to
walk, not just the politicians as well, the big businessmen with all the money as well. So we may be going after traffickers here in D.C., but we're not going after the buyers who bought sex for the children because of that.
At what point did you wake up and say that I no longer want to be this way, that I have to change? At what point did you say enough is enough?
Yeah, I think that with any change in anyone's life, it is never the one thing that makes you want change. I wish it was that simple, right? It's like the 587 things. The problem is this: how do you know how to change that? Who do I know that was out of the life, that changed your life around, that wasn't in jail? I didn't know anybody like that. So what actually happens is I used to get so angry when people kept telling me how smart I was. You're so smart, you can do anything. You're so smart, you're so smart. I was so mad. And you're mad because you're telling me how smart I am, but you're not telling me how to change anything. You're not giving me the steps to change my patterns. So it actually becomes very upsetting. So, I mean, I hit rock bottom, you know, lots of times. So you hit rock bottoms enough until you get tired enough. It gets overwhelming. When it gets overwhelming, you stop. And it's just too much because you don't know what to do. So with me not trusting any decisions, if I woke up every single day and I went to the left, instead I tried to go to the right and see if I came with a different outcome. And really you start on pieces of that. And you start trying to cut off things that you're doing in a negative life to change it. I mean, and that took years. It wasn't overnight. So that takes a lot of years of you trying to do that within itself.
And at what point did Courtney's house come into being? When did you think of that and really decide this is what you wanted to do?
So actually, you know, Courtney's house was way far down, and I always knew I wanted to start something, but I did not just start off with my own organization at all. I thought that was a smart thing. However, and I also did not think I was going to start on an organization to work with girls and boys who were sex trafficked. That was never really like that plan. I knew I wanted to start something. I knew I wanted to do a nonprofit. but that's not actually what happened. What happened was this: in about 2003-ish, around 2003, 2004, there's an organization called Polaris Project. That's a big organization in Washington, D.C. area. At that time, it was the beginning of their organization. And I saw an ad quite simply on Monster.com. And actually, to this day, I kept what I wrote. So I found this ad, and it's the first time ever that I think I made a connection. So the ad said they were looking for someone to help develop their programs for people who were human trafficked. So at first, when I see this human trafficking and the definitions, the first thing I thought was, oh, I always wanted to help these women in other countries. Because trafficking is not a word that we used being forced into life. That's not our word. That's actually a governmental term and a legal term. So actually survivors of sex trafficking don't know they're survivors of sex trafficking, because that's not even the words we use. So I thought the same as anybody would think, that happens overseas, let me help those people. But then as I began to read the description that I've never saw in my life, it said that they wanted survivors to apply for the position. And then they wrote down, if you were under the age of 18 and you were ever, it said commercial sex industry, and then it put highlight, which means if you ever worked in strip clubs underage. I'm like, okay. If you were ever with various gangs and had to do something, I'm like, okay. And then it said something, then it said pimps. If you ever had a pimp, I'm like, is this real? Did they really say that? That means you're with them. So I'm like, people want you? Like, wait a minute. And I couldn't believe it. So for the first time ever, I'm like answering this ad, applying, putting my resume in, and then I took the piece out that it said pimp. I cut and pasted it and I put it into mine, and I say, you know, these things happened to me. In 15 minutes, the founder at the time called me and he asked me to come in for an interview. So when I came in, it was not an easy interview process. It's actually a 4-tier interview process. And one of it was starting up a street outreach program. And I just kind of put everything down. And that's my first position that I got inside the anti-trafficking world. I worked there from 2003 to 2007. And then basically I burned out. And I burned out because I have 2 kids. I'm a single parent. I took care of my mom, who both her legs was amputated. I worked 90 hours a week. I ran the emergency housing, the hotline, and the drop-in center and street outreach program.
What does a child sex slave victim look like? They look like you did when you were a child. They look like your children. You don't have to go to Thailand to buy a child. You can come right here on 14th and K. From ages 12 to 14 is the most common age.
So with all that being said, and make a long story short and a short story short, was my mom was dying and very ill. And I moved back to take care of her. And she said, you know, you need to start your own organization. You can do this. You really need to do it. And I said, no. And she said, why not? And I said, Mom, I can't do it. The hardest part of this job is actually not working with the survivors. I absolutely enjoy it. I can work on programs all day. It's the people that say that they are for survivors and they're not. And I don't know if I can keep my mouth shut in this movement and do it. And she said, and that's why you need to be there, so don't. I've never known you to be ashamed of anything, which is true. I've never known you not to speak out about something that's on your mind. It's the qualities I love about you. So do it. So I still didn't do it. I'm like, it's hard, money, blah, 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 blah. So beginning right towards she died, the last few months, there was this foundation that approached me. And the foundation approached me because they funded the programs. When I was at the other organization, they funded those programs. And they said, hey, we're getting ready to open up a grant series and you should apply. And I'm looking at them like, I should apply. They're like, yes, you should apply for it if you're starting your own organization. And matter of fact, we'll help you write it. So I'm like, oh. So I tell my mom, she's like, that's because you're supposed to do it. Well, I thought about it. I'm like, I'm not sure. Okay. So basically, before I really kind of had everything started up, my mom died in 2008. And right when I was trying to do the paperwork, come up with a name and what we were doing and going ahead and starting it out, I did a speaking engagement maybe 2 days before my mom died. And my mom was like, you need to go do it. And I went and I did it. And it was at this church. It was a woman pastor who was newly there. She came to me and said, I don't know if this is enough, but we have a small space that you can use as a drop-in center. So I'm like, maybe I am supposed to do this. And I was truly excited about it. My mom passed. And in the will, she left me seed money to start up Courtney's house. And then she named it. Shay's Place was the group home that we were going to open. And then Courtney's house. And so Courtney's house is the name of my youngest daughter. And Shay's Place, Shanae's my oldest daughter. But that's not the real reason she thought of the names. The real reason we thought of the names is this. So it can have a name and sound like a friend's house. And you can talk about it in front of people. And there's no stigma because it sounds like you're going to your friend's house. And so that's the true beginning of Courtney's house. August 2008 is when we started.
Hello, I'm Tina Front, the founder and executive director of Courtney's House. Courtney's House is an organization dedicated to ending sex trafficking and helping its victims to recover their lives.
This man that coerced you when you were a teenager, and the men that raped you, and the pimps, and the thugs, and the firefighters, the policemen, the lawyers, the politicians, and all the other type of men that repeatedly abuse these children. Do you hate them?
I don't hate them. I did hate them for a very long time. Hating people really just helps you hate yourself more. And I had to really understand that. Not everybody is like that, but that's all I ever saw. So I really did think every person, every guy bought sex. One way or another, they did in some component. Over the years, I had to learn how to heal to help myself. I don't think all men are like that. I think I had to learn something. Not to only to trust somebody, I should trust someone by their actions and not alone just their words. And that's something we teach at Courtney's house. Everything I went through is how I developed all of my plans. So I developed all of our programs and curriculums off of my life. How I had to change it around. It's transitioning the whole entire mindset. So someone formed this mindset at an early age of negativity. And I had to learn that not the whole world is full of negativity, but there are negative people. I don't hate everyone at all. Do I love pimps? Do I love buyers? Of course not. Not at all. That's not my mission. But I don't have hate in my heart for everybody either.
After personally spending decades recovering from this horrible experience, I founded Courtney's House in August of 2008, hoping to give girls and boys trapped in forced prostitution a helping hand they can trust.
But when these girls that come to you, what is the emotional state that they come in? Do they come in filled with hate, confusion? What emotional state do you find these girls and boys in?
The girls and boys that we work with all come the same exact mindset. The way we even pitch our groups to them is this way. Have you ever walked in a room? And when you walked in the room, you walked to the store, you walked into the mall, the first thing you did was go, I can get him for this, I can get him for that, I can get him for that. And they all say, yeah. And I said, we help you turn that around, turn it off. And they go, for real, because I don't know how. That's the mindset that your mind gets into. It's about money and dollar signs, because that's all you know. All you know is manipulation off of money. Everybody comes in the same. Everybody comes in the same anger. Everybody fights all the time because you have all of this anger and you have a lot of abuse. It is not just your trafficking situation. It's also not just the sex part. What about watching someone killed in front of you, but you're not allowed to help them? Show emotion, because you'll get beat if you even shed a tear for that person who they just killed in front of you. It's all about that too. It's about the violence you see. It's about the rape of other people you weren't able to help. It's about guilt. So because it's about so many different layers of it, yeah, you're filled with anger. You're filled with, I never thought I'd live past 30. I didn't even plan. Most of them don't think they're gonna live beyond 22, 21. They don't even plan. Or they throw themselves into school really hard. If they're family controlled, definitely, so they don't have to be in that house anymore. So actually they're resilient and they don't even know they're resilient.
So how do you go about releasing that hate? How do you go about helping them be whole again and to love again and to trust again?
And then I think that's important for our programs on long term. You know, some of our survivors actually have been with us since 2008, because you work on things way more as sections in life. So with that being said, I had to create this thing called Positive Hustle. That's our Positive Hustle case management tool. And the way we do that is that we actually take the negative things. And so one of the negative things of our survivors would be that maybe one steals all the time, right? So we take all the negative things they've done, we work on the stealing piece. Well, now it's been 40 days since they've been stealing, right? And so you take that stealing, maybe they help get food donated. It's really, what they're really searching for is that adrenaline rush that they have when they steal. They don't know how to change that piece to something positive, because that's a skill. Shoot, it's a skill to steal something and not get caught. That's a skill. Our survivors who had to cook crack all the time, and they say, well, I cook crack all the time. And I say, well, that's a chemist, honey. You should have been a chemist because you cook good. But there are other things that you can do with that. So we take those negative, we find their love, and we turn it to positive. So instead of stealing, they get food donated. I'm like, I really like getting food donated. Like, this is really good. And one of our survivors like, I really like chemistry. I didn't even know I was smart enough to be in chemistry. So what if we do that? What if we actually do that? What if we start taking these negatives and learning how to take it into a positive that we can see and feel and see ourselves grow? Then that's real success.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because I mean, I see that there's a lot that can be done for the children involved, as far as the programs you have in place to try and help them. But what about the men? Clearly something is going on with the psyches of the men involved here. What do you think drives a human being to victimize another in such a way, particularly a child? Are these men lacking in morality? Do they not have a conscience? What do you think it is that creates a person like that?
I honestly think that it's not even about that. Usually abuse is just way more about the power in it. And the power is, you can buy anything you want with your money. Doesn't really matter if it's boy, girl, 12, 10, 15, 27. You can buy it. And then you own it for that night, for that hour, for those minutes, to do whatever you want to do. It's a control, to me, more of a mechanism. Sometimes we fool ourselves. We all know someone that went to strip clubs, you know, and I worked in strip clubs when I was 14 and 15, 16. And our survivors worked in strip clubs when they were 13 and 12, or in the back when they were 11 and 12 in the back part. And I think people think strip clubs are legit, and so that's okay if I go to the strip club. That's okay if I watch porn, because even though it says barely 18, they're just pretending, and they're really over 18. So I think it's a lot of different mindsets. I also think music, movies, it's all over the world. All sex sells, right? So now it's like this divide on, it's okay, it's all right, it's fine. They're willing participants, even if they're young, they want it.
So these same men that we're talking about, that create and perpetuate the system, that create the need for organizations like yours, are they aware of who you are, Tina? Do they know you and your organization's efforts to stop them? And if they do, are you not afraid for your safety?
I'm not going to say they know me, now know me. I don't know. Sometimes I think I probably have a false security of safety. I mean, my whole life wasn't safe. I've been protecting myself my whole life. My whole life wasn't safe. So in these situations, pretty savvy on what I need to do. I can't sit and worry about what they thinking about, because there's a lot going on that they messed up that I need to fix on the survivor end. So we put our things in place that we have. We have never gotten any threats or anything like that. I think people always think about pimps or gang members, but they don't think about who threatens us the most. Because actually I did get threats, and those threats are from family members. Family members threaten you the most. Family members, so that means a mom, a grandmother, a father who is trafficking their child, who sells their child. First they're all sad, and it's the child's fault, and then the anger, and then I'm gonna sue you, I'm gonna kill you, then I'm angry, because you're taking away not only their child, but their money. And actually, family threatens you the most. So you put things in place. You work with different entities to make sure that you and your staff is safe.
Will there ever be a day where organizations like Courtney's House are no longer needed? Can you?
I pray for that. Yeah.
Envision such a future?
I pray for that. I pray for it. I hope it is the day. I think that's not going to happen in the next 20 years. Maybe it will. And I say that because there are already so many survivors out there that we don't know about that need services, both from the boy and girl part. They're already out there. So maybe in the next 20, but if we don't go after the man who buys sex, this is just going to keep happening. Without supply, there'll be no demand. So you can get pimps all day long. That's great. But we have to start charging the man who has sex and buys sex from children.
Obviously, the FBI was protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of old pedophiles. They were protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of drug peddlers. They were protecting, in my opinion, they were protecting some very prominent politicians, some very powerful and wealthy individuals associated with those politicians and the political system, up to and including the highest political people in this entire country.